A storm is brewing over New York's elite, and the shockwaves are unstoppable. George Russell, the titan of industry, the man who defied tradition and built an empire from steel and ambition, is dead. And with his fall, everything changes. His family, once the symbol of unstoppable new money power, now teeters on the edge of collapse. Secrets are surfacing, alliances are shifting, and Bertha Russell must rise, or risk losing everything. What happens when the heart of the Russell Empire stops beating? In Season 3, Episode 8 of The Gilded Age, power, grief, and betrayal collide in a way no one saw coming. George Russell's sudden death doesn't just break the hearts of his family, it fractures the very foundation of New York's social and financial worlds. His influence was vast, his name feared and respected in every boardroom, ballroom, and backroom deal from Fifth Avenue to Wall Street. Now, with him gone, the people he once commanded with a glance are turning on each other, desperate to claim a piece of the crumbling empire. Bertha Russell, still reeling from the loss, faces a new kind of battle, not just for respect, but for survival. In the hours after George's passing, the Russell mansion transforms from a palace of opulence to a tense, grief-stricken fortress. Whispers fill the halls. Who will take over? Did George prepare for this? The elite, once cautiously respectful of the Russells, now see vulnerability. Bertha knows the vultures are circling, and they don't plan to wait long. For Bertha, grief must take a backseat. There is no time to collapse under the weight of loss. She must take command. But even as she begins to rally her strength, a new problem emerges: uncertainty. George, always a strategist, left behind a will, but its contents remain locked away, known only to his closest confidant, whose loyalty may not survive the temptations of power. Rumors fly. Did George name a successor? Did he leave Bertha with full control, or has he handed the keys to the empire to someone else? As news of George's death spreads, the social elite gather not to mourn, but to speculate. The newspapers are relentless. Headlines scream of corporate turmoil, potential takeovers, and family infighting. Investors panic. Shares in Russell's railroad companies tumble. Opportunists eye the chaos, hoping to carve out their own fortune from the ruins of the Russell legacy. Amid the chaos, Bertha clings to what she knows. Appearances matter. She must project strength, no matter the storm inside her. She hosts a private gathering, a somber yet strategic event, bringing together key players in New York's high society. Every handshake, every glance, is a negotiation. She needs allies and fast. But nothing is simple. Old money families who once begrudgingly accepted the Russells into their social circles now see a chance to reclaim dominance. The Astors, the Van Ryns, and others begin maneuvering behind closed doors, hoping to isolate Bertha and reclaim their control over New York's social hierarchy. At the center of it all stands Larry Russell, George's son, now forced into a spotlight he never truly wanted. Larry is expected to lead, to fill shoes too large for most men. But doubt gnaws at him. Can he rise to the occasion? Or will the empire his father built collapse under the weight of inexperience? Bertha watches her son closely. She sees potential, but also hesitation. She knows he must grow, and quickly. Yet, as she pushes him toward leadership, she fears losing him to the same ambition that once consumed George. In Episode 8, the drama intensifies. Betrayals emerge. Friends reveal their true colors. Hidden debts, both financial and personal, rise to the surface. And as Bertha fights to keep her family's place in a world ready to cast them aside, she realizes the greatest threat may not come from the outside, but from within. The question looms: will the Russells survive this storm, or will George's death mark the end of their reign? As the city grapples with George Russell's death, attention turns to one burning question: what did George leave behind? Not just in wealth, but in power. Whispers of his last will and testament spread like wildfire. For some, it's merely curiosity. For others, it's war. The reading of George's will is no longer a private family matter. It's a public spectacle, one that could ignite a chain reaction across the financial and social elite of New York. Inside the Russell mansion, tension is unbearable. Bertha tries to maintain control, but uncertainty eats away at her confidence. George had always promised they were partners, equals in ambition and destiny. But now she wonders, did he truly trust her to lead after him? Or did he place the future in someone else's hands? The will is sealed in the office of George's longtime attorney, a man whose loyalty seems to shift with the wind. Bertha demands answers, but is met with cold professionalism and a delay. The will can only be read with all principal heirs present, and one key player is missing. George's estranged younger brother, Everett Russell, re-enters the picture after years in exile. Once a rising star in the business world, Everett fell from grace amid scandal and rivalry with George. Now, he returns with suspicious timing, claiming he has a right to know the contents of the will, and possibly more. His presence reignites old wounds and brings a new threat. Bertha must decide whether to confront him or attempt to keep him close, all while knowing he may be the spark that burns down everything she's trying to protect. Meanwhile, the public narrative begins to slip from Bertha's control. Anonymous sources leak to the press, alleging mismanagement, hidden debts, and even questionable alliances George may have made in his final years. Bertha suspects sabotage. She knows her enemies want to paint the Russells as weak, divided, and vulnerable. If she loses control of the narrative, she risks losing everything. Her solution is bold. Bertha makes a rare public appearance, addressing reporters directly. She speaks of George's legacy, his love for the city, his devotion to family, but she also makes a promise. The Russell name will endure. It's a calculated move, blending grief with defiance. Some are impressed. Others see desperation. But Bertha's message is clear. She will not fade quietly into the background. Inside the family, fault lines begin to widen. Larry, struggling under the weight of expectation, begins to question his place. The board of directors from George's companies view him as inexperienced, a liability rather than a leader. They pressure him to step aside, or at least accept a mentor to guide him. Larry sees through the offer. It's a power grab, wrapped in concern. His response is hesitant. He seeks his mother's counsel, but Bertha is torn. She wants to protect her son, but she also knows leadership is forged in fire. He must face this challenge alone. As tensions rise, a surprising offer arrives. One of George's former rivals, a powerful old money banker, extends an olive branch to Bertha. He proposes a partnership, offering financial backing and influence in exchange for a share of the Russell empire. It's tempting, but Bertha is suspicious. She knows the old guard never truly accepted her. Is this a genuine alliance, or a trap meant to wrest control away from her family? At the same time, Everett begins his own campaign. He whispers to board members, staff, and family friends, claiming George once promised him a role in the empire. He paints Larry as unfit, Bertha as overreaching. His charm masks his ambition, but Bertha sees it for what it is, an attempt to divide and conquer. The will reading is finally set. All eyes are on the Russell mansion. Friends, enemies, and opportunists gather, not out of respect, but for revelation. The outcome could change everything, and in the hours leading up to it, Bertha prepares for battle. She's not just fighting for wealth, she's fighting for control, respect, and the very legacy of the man she lost. In Episode 8's heart-pounding second act, the true battle for the Russell name begins. Loyalties are tested, secrets hinted at, and every move feels like a gamble. One wrong step, and the empire could fall. The moment everyone has waited for arrives. Inside the somber drawing room of the Russell mansion, the atmosphere is thick with tension. Chairs creak, eyes dart, and hushed conversations die down as George Russell's attorney steps forward, the sealed envelope in hand. Bertha sits straight-backed, face calm, but hands clenched in her lap. Larry paces near the window, avoiding Everett's cold stare. The room holds its breath. The will is opened. George's voice, though absent, fills the room through his final written words. His opening is expected. He speaks of love for his family, of the empire he built with pride, and his hopes for their future. But as the will continues, the room's collective heartbeat quickens. George's empire, once under his sole command, is now to be divided. To Larry, George leaves a controlling interest in the railroad conglomerate, but with one condition: a probationary period. For 1 year, Larry's decisions must be reviewed and approved by a select advisory council, a board George himself named before his death. If Larry fails to earn the board's confidence, his control transfers to another. That name? Everett Russell. Gasps ripple through the room. Bertha's face freezes. Larry's stomach sinks. Everett smiles. The shock is immediate and devastating. George, in his strategic brilliance or perhaps last-minute doubt, has opened the door to chaos. Bertha realizes the implications instantly. For Larry, the next year is a test, a dangerous one, where failure hands power directly to their greatest internal threat. Everett feigns humility, claiming surprise, but Bertha knows better. This is what he wanted: leverage, power, and legitimacy. Now he has it. But the will doesn't stop there. Bertha's inheritance is vast: properties, trust funds, and a minority stake in the business. George praises her loyalty, her strength, and her role in his success. Yet, despite his words, she knows the truth. George gave her influence, but not control. The final authority lies between Larry and Everett, a decision that feels like a betrayal. The fallout is immediate. Larry is crushed, questioning why his father would doubt him. He feels exposed, manipulated, and now under pressure from both the advisory board and Everett's watchful eye. Bertha tries to steady him, but Larry's confidence falters. Every business meeting becomes a battlefield. Every decision is scrutinized. The board, a mix of George's loyalists and opportunists, becomes a power broker. Larry must win them over, or lose everything. Everett wastes no time. He begins courting board members, offering alternative visions for the company's future. He hosts elegant dinners, spins stories of George's supposed last regrets, and paints himself as the steady hand the empire needs. Some listen. Others remain cautious. But the seed of doubt is planted. Bertha responds with precision. She strengthens her social alliances, using every ounce of influence to rally support for Larry. She hosts galas, cultivates public sympathy, and works behind the scenes to pressure key players. Her goal is simple: make Everett's path as difficult as possible. But she knows the battle has only just begun. Outside the Russell household, the press is relentless. Headlines scream of a divided dynasty. Editorials question Larry's readiness and speculate on Everett's sudden rise. Bertha sees how perception is shifting, and she knows that public confidence is crucial. If investors sense weakness, the entire Russell fortune could unravel. Within the mansion, cracks begin to form. Larry resents the pressure. He begins making risky decisions, hoping to prove himself quickly. Bertha urges caution, but he grows frustrated, feeling like a pawn in a game he doesn't fully understand. Their relationship strains. Meanwhile, Everett quietly drives the wedge deeper, posing as a helpful advisor, while plotting his next move. And then, a revelation. One of George's most trusted former associates visits Bertha privately. He reveals that George had been under immense pressure in his final months, from government regulators, secret deals gone sour, and enemies who threatened to expose him. George's decision to include Everett wasn't just strategy, it was insurance. Someone had leverage over him, and he needed Everett to protect the family should scandal erupt. Bertha is stunned. George's legacy is even more fragile than she thought. There are skeletons, and someone out there may be ready to use them. Now Bertha faces a new, terrifying challenge. Not just keeping control of the empire, but protecting it from ruin. The question is no longer just who will lead the Russell legacy, but whether it can survive the secrets that threaten to destroy it. The days following the reading of George Russell's will are consumed by chaos, not only within the family, but across the empire George left behind. The cracks beneath the surface are widening. Stockholders grow nervous. The press feeds on every rumor, and within the Russell mansion, tension threatens to boil over. Bertha Russell, once the queen of New York's social scene, now faces an empire in turmoil, a family on the brink, and a dangerous enemy with increasing influence, Everett. Everett is no longer hiding in the shadows. His every move is calculated, his public face polished. He presents himself as the calm voice of reason amid chaos, but behind closed doors, his ambitions are becoming clear. He wants control, not just temporary power over the company, but full ownership of the Russell legacy. And he's playing a long game. Everett begins to pressure the advisory board. He leaks private concerns to trusted allies, suggesting Larry's inexperience poses a risk to shareholders and the family fortune. He subtly questions Bertha's involvement in business affairs, insinuating that her grief clouds her judgment. His tactics are manipulative but effective. Board members begin to waver. Investors whisper. Some even approach Everett in private, looking for stability and promises. Meanwhile, Bertha fights to hold the family together. But Larry is unraveling. The pressure is immense. Every decision he makes is second-guessed. His meetings with the advisory board turn hostile. His attempts to assert leadership are met with resistance. Worst of all, he begins to doubt himself, not just as a leader, but as a son. Why did his father cast doubt on him in death? Why did George believe Everett deserved a place at the table? Larry's frustration turns inward. He isolates himself, missing critical meetings, making rash decisions without consulting the board or his mother. Bertha sees the warning signs. She tries to reach him, to remind him of his potential, but Larry pushes her away. He resents the pressure, the constant comparison to George, and the expectation to be something he's not. At the same time, the scandal George feared begins to surface. A mysterious figure contacts Bertha through George's former associate, a journalist who claims to possess documents implicating George in a series of questionable business practices. Bribes, land grabs, and backroom deals that, if exposed, could destroy the Russell empire. The journalist demands a meeting and hints at publishing everything if Bertha doesn't cooperate. Bertha is torn. She knows the damage this could cause. The Russell name would be ruined, their fortune lost, and her children cast out of the world she fought so hard to enter. She also realizes the truth. George kept secrets from her, and now she must decide how far she's willing to go to protect his legacy. She meets the journalist in secret. He offers her a choice: pay for silence or allow the truth to come out. Bertha, calculating and fierce, refuses both. Instead, she begins her own investigation, determined to find the source of the leak. She suspects Everett. It's the only explanation that makes sense. He's the one who benefits most from scandal. If the Russell name is tarnished and Larry discredited, Everett can claim the empire, clean and unchallenged. Bertha sets a trap. She leaks false information to Everett through a trusted, but wavering, board member. If the false rumor appears in the press, she'll know Everett is the source. It's a dangerous game. If Everett discovers her plan, he could strike back harder than ever. Meanwhile, inside the Russell family, divisions deepen. Larry, worn thin by pressure and self-doubt, considers stepping aside. He confides in his sister, revealing his fears, that he'll never be good enough, that George never believed in him, and that Bertha sees him only as a means to an end. His sister tries to console him, but the damage is done. Larry disappears for days, missing key business meetings. The advisory board grows restless. Everett seizes the opportunity. He calls an emergency board meeting, presenting a case for temporary leadership to stabilize the company while Larry regains his footing. Some members agree. Others hesitate. Bertha arrives uninvited, confronting Everett in front of the board. The confrontation is icy, tense, and explosive. She accuses Everett of sabotage, of feeding lies to the press, of betraying George's memory. Everett denies everything, playing the victim, accusing Bertha of paranoia and emotional instability. The board is divided. A vote is called to remove Larry temporarily and install Everett as interim CEO. Just before the vote, news breaks. The false leak Bertha planted appears in the press, nearly word for word. The source? Everett's inner circle. Bertha exposes him in front of the board. Shock, outrage, and disbelief ripple through the room. Everett's betrayal is clear. His support crumbles. The vote is cancelled. Everett storms out, his ambitions momentarily crushed. But Bertha knows it's not over. George's secrets still loom. The scandal still threatens. And Larry, the son she's fighting for, may not be strong enough to carry the weight of their name. Everett's exposure should have marked a turning point, a victory for Bertha, a moment of clarity for Larry, and a chance to stabilize the Russell empire. But instead, it triggers a deeper unraveling. Bertha knows that defeating Everett in the boardroom was just the first battle. The real war, to save the family name, the fortune, and their place in society, is far from over. The scandal that George feared is not dead. The journalist returns, emboldened by the chaos, now threatening to go public with damning evidence. Letters, contracts, and testimonies, all pointing to George's involvement in a corrupt land acquisition scheme that helped build his fortune. If the news breaks, it won't just ruin George's legacy. It will destroy the Russell family's social standing and trigger investigations that could collapse their financial empire. Bertha faces a grim choice: suppress the truth at any cost, or come clean and risk everything. She debates bribery, legal threats, and political favors. But time is running out. The press is closing in, and enemies are ready to exploit their downfall. Larry, still reeling from his near removal as CEO, finally confronts the weight of his father's actions. The man he idolized, the man he was told to emulate, built his empire on shaky foundations. For Larry, this is the final blow. He isolates himself, haunted by questions. Can I carry a legacy built on lies? Can I be the man my father wasn't? For the first time, Larry isn't just angry, he's ashamed. Bertha sees her son crumbling and realizes she has pushed him too hard. In a rare moment of vulnerability, she approaches him not as the matriarch of the Russell dynasty, but as a grieving mother. She confesses her fears, that George kept secrets, that she may not be able to protect them, and that Larry might not want the empire he's expected to inherit. This moment shifts something in Larry. He understands that leadership isn't just about power or prestige. It's about responsibility. He vows not to run, not to hide behind boardrooms and public relations. He will face the truth, no matter the cost. His decision: to meet with the journalist himself. At the meeting, Larry offers full transparency. He admits his father's mistakes, but he draws a line. Hold George accountable, not the future of the family. He offers access to internal documents, agrees to reforms in the company, and promises to lead differently, with integrity, not ambition. The journalist is stunned. This isn't the spoiled heir the press has portrayed. This is a man trying to salvage his family's name without deception. The story is still published, but the angle shifts. It's not a hit piece. It's a complex, balanced portrait of a powerful family facing its darkest hour with unexpected grace. Public reaction is mixed. Some are shocked, others impressed. Investors, fearing instability, hesitate, but a few, touched by Larry's honesty, double down, believing that the new Russell leadership may offer something the old never did: transparency. Everett, now exposed and humiliated, makes one final move. He attempts a hostile takeover, backed by shadowy investors who want to break up the Russell empire for profit. It's brutal. Stocks plummet. Board members panic. Bertha realizes the empire is hanging by a thread. In a stunning finale, Bertha reveals her own trump card. She had anticipated Everett's betrayal and, quietly, over the past weeks, consolidated key shares through trusted allies. In the decisive board meeting, she outmaneuvers Everett once and for all, stripping him of any influence and protecting the core of the empire. Larry, inspired by his mother's strategic brilliance and emboldened by his new sense of purpose, steps into his role with clarity. He restructures the company, focusing on long-term stability and ethical leadership. His first public speech, simple and heartfelt, signals a new era for the Russells. Bertha stands beside him, proud but changed. She knows the world will never see her the same again, not just as a social climber, but as a protector, a tactician, and above all, a mother who fought for her family. As the season ends, the Russell Empire stands battered but not broken. George's shadow lingers, but in its place rises a new legacy, forged not in secrecy, but in fire, ambition, and redemption. The Gilded Age has never been more dangerous, or more compelling. And for Bertha and Larry, the true challenge is just beginning.